Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Oh, maybe hi now. Welcome back. Hope you've had a great week, as good as you possibly can, given the situation, at least the political situation. But I really do hope that you've had a good week. Hi, Erin. So I want to start with a very unrelated story about being embarrassed. How I got embarrassed myself. All right, so I was in high school, or I guess maybe junior high. Anyways, we went swimming as like a group. We went to a swimming pool and all these things. And I still did gymnastics at the time, and one of my teachers knew that. And so my teacher kept challenging me to do a flip of some sort into the water. And guys, I have never been a good diver. Like I don't get the mechanics of it. So I just set my butt in the water usually. But I did it. Okay. I did it. I tried. I got on the diving board, jumped as hard as I could because that's what you would do in gymnastics. I pretty much almost got slingshot out off the board. Anyways, I do like a front flip into the water and I hit the water so hard. I mean, it hurt. It was like smacked me. And yeah, it hurt. So I'm like, okay, well, I did that and that will probably still look impressive, right? And I get out of the water and guys, my top is off, like completely off. And I had no idea either. And someone goes, your top's off. And I go, anyways, it was super embarrassing. I did get the top retrieved, but by that point, everybody had seen. So there was no hiding it at that point. Luckily, it was towards the end of the year, so hopefully the summer would allow people to have forgotten about that. So that's my story. I hope you guys enjoyed that at any rate. I try to open with a story just to let people to kind of come into the chat or into watching the stream, because I don't know when people want me to start. So I'm like, here's a story. Got more people. Good. Hey, Gary. And hello, Ricardo Oliveira. Again, I hope you've had a great week. So I read an article recently, and I have it actually linked in the description box. And it's from the New York Times, and it's an opinion piece. And the title of it is, "What does the Democratic Party stand for?" Which is an excellent question. It was written August 18th, at least that's when it was published. So not that long ago. And during the article, it kind of like asked this politician this, asked this political organization this other question. And it was basically explaining that there are two factions of the Democratic Party, the revolutionary faction and the back to normal faction. I don't remember what the author said called that particular faction, but that's essentially what it was doing. And so I got to thinking here, and I'm like, well, let's just be real. The Democratic Party has arguably been shifting left for years. And you can see this in just essentially who their big tent not only grabs in, but the policies and the positions that they've decided to either let go or no longer advocate for or just completely oppose. So we've got a Biden, Biden and Harris did the whole DNC thing and accepted the nomination. And so we've got this whole problem here because his party platform, which again, the article keeps saying is the most progressive party platform that has ever existed on the Democratic side for someone running for president who has made it this far and has gotten the nomination. First of all, that's not true. Clinton's platform was actually more progressive than Biden's platform. Clinton at least had the public option as a healthcare measure, and Biden does not have that. Clinton did have criminal justice reform on her platform. Biden, as far as I know, doesn't really have that, or at least is not very comprehensive. And nobody's going to believe him either if there is a criminal justice piece to the platform. Why? Because of who he decided to have as a running mate. Now, this is clearly we see through this. We know what's going on. They chose a biracial Black woman. She's half Black, half Asian, a biracial Black woman to be the running mate, who has a sordid, what I would consider sordid, criminal justice history. So she has spent her entire adult career taking away rights from people, and in some cases, assuring that no justice is served because of the fact that she defied courts who instructed her to release prisoners. She defied that order to where it had to be issued a second time. So this is one of the reasons why people call her a cop. And she also add to that the truancy laws that she definitely supported and followed through on and assured happened. And if you're not familiar, truancy laws are basically if a child is absent from school, I don't know what the time frame is because I think it differs, but let's say for 10 straight days in a row, the parent is subject to being prosecuted and sent to prison, essentially, for whatever time frame, or even fined. But a lot of people who have truants, they can't really afford these fines. And again, that's just another way to get your ass in prison. And so these are not something that I would consider to be progressive, nor would I consider it to be criminal, like justice. It just seems unjust to me. And so for Biden to choose someone like Harris, they are speaking to another aspect of what's going on in the Democratic Party. So let's look at the return to normalcy portion of the party. What I think is happening is that they are shifting from any semblance of left-wingism to a moderate right-wing position. And they're positioning themselves to be the moderate right-wing party. And you can see this through the platforms, what is on their platform. You can see this based off of who they even invited to speak at the convention, which Kasich is a Republican, guys. They invited, I don't remember the other Republican, but I know that they invited him, and he's definitely just an anti-Trump Republican. That's it. So they're uniting on this one essential, I guess, position, which is anti-Trump. That is it. And so this article in which I read takes the position that the Democratic Party does have a coherent platform that is progressive, in fact, the most progressive, but you can clearly see that the Democratic Party is no longer speaking to the left. The article also argued that the Democratic Party is being controlled more and more by the left. That is not true. The left was able to shift Hillary Clinton into new positions The left has not been able to do diddly with Biden's platform. Nothing. We have not been able to convince him to even do a Medicare for all single payer system during the time of an epidemic in which it would make sense. Where I heard today that about 30 million Americans lost their insurance over the history of Trump's presidency so far. And so you've got a substantial portion of the United States who does not have health care, nor do they have access to health care. Yet we can't get Biden to shift on that. So I believe that the Democratic Party is no longer answerable to the left-wing portion of the party. They are no longer going to negotiate with the left-wing portion of the party. And here's the thing that's most troubling about this. They don't need the left. They have positioned themselves behind a unifying factor that the left and a portion of the right can agree with, and the middle. They don't like Trump. The left doesn't like Trump. And so positioning yourself behind this position is for one, you don't stand for anything, right? Like getting Trump out of office, and then what is the question I have that would follow that. And I would imagine it would be a return to normalcy, the Obama era. So they're going back to a time where they felt the country was on the right track, where they were at peace, where they didn't have to be confronted with all of the systems that are broken within the United States that Donald Trump has helped uncover, essentially, for a large portion of Americans who did not know that other Americans experience what they do. And it's not only is it frustrating, but it's frustrating to know that they don't need the left anymore. They just don't. Who votes? It's older Americans. They are very consistent voters. Why? There's an aspect as to why this is the case. It's because younger Americans aren't able to vote as easily. When you're retired, you don't have a job, you can get to the polls. We in the United States do not have a voting holiday, which makes it more difficult for younger Americans who have to work to get their asses to the polls. That's just the reality of the situation. It is by design, though. It is by design. And one thing that is very consistent about all areas of conservatism that I have either read about or have experienced myself is this nostalgia for the past. And because of the fact that they are, reaching back and using nostalgia, basically, nostalgia is their party platform. Trump out, nostalgia. The fact that they are using such a tool is indicative of conservatism. And I think a lot of people will agree with me on the fact that the Democratic Party is a right-wing party. I think they may not agree with me on about the influence the left could have. I believe that the right has more influence at this point. You can totally see that with, again, who spoke at the DNC. You can see that with who is kind of collaborating with the Democrats, like the Lincoln Project, right? They are a set of anti-Trump conservatives, and they are pushing people to vote for Biden. A lot of these people are still pushing for Biden that are bona fide, loyal conservatives. Right. So Chris Freeman adds that the Dems are very openly giving the left the middle finger by courting anti-Trump conservatives F the corporate parties. Yeah, we have a fascist party and a fascist light party. And that puts the left in a bind, because if you are like me, I see the problem of Donald Trump. I see his administration doing all of the things that I would absolutely oppose, like the immigration policies, even though that's a carryover from the Obama years. I opposed it then, I oppose it now. However, Trump has put that on steroids, making it a lot harsher and a harder punishment just to immigrate to the United States. Even as an asylum seeker, they lock asylum seekers up. That was not a thing under the previous administrations. You can see this as what they've done to the public spaces. So public spaces, including federal parks, right? Like Yosemite and the Grand Canyon. These are all public spaces that people look at. Well, Donald Trump has sold them off basically to oil tycoons so that they can drill in our public spaces that taxpayer money goes towards to maintain and upkeep. Not to mention this whole fiasco with the USPS, right? Where, anyways, everybody knows about that. And it's one of those, you create a problem in order to solve the problem yourself so that you end up looking good. So look, I fixed the USPS. It was so dysfunctional beforehand. Well, you're the asshole who made it dysfunctional in the first place. It doesn't, anyways, so we've got the fascist party and the fascist light party is my point. And they no longer need the left. The fascist party never needed the left. Let's just be real. But the fascist light party did. And the fact that they have shunned the left should speak volumes for those who identify themselves as leftists. You will never get what you want as a leftist if you support any party that supports capitalism. Leftism is all about anti-capitalism, anti-establishment, right? And so anytime that you get together with the right, I guess, to come up with policy or something like that, you will never get it. You will never get that needs to be done, which I believe needs to be done is dismantling capitalism and finding a new system that works for everybody. It's not rocket science to do this, but it is not as money making as those people that are uber wealthy would want. And so they get to basically pay off through lobbying politicians so that they implement their policy that they want. And it usually ends up hurting the little guys, everybody else. Okay, so Michael Contreras says, I think the reason why the DNC didn't invite Julian Castro, who I think is not nearly as left like AOC is because he questioned Biden's memory in one of the debates last year. They're so petty. Yeah, and the thing is that just because you are an anti-Trump party, you agree with the left, it doesn't mean that you should be immune to criticism at all. And right now, this is what we are seeing. We are seeing that nobody is allowed to criticize either Biden or Harris on their previous policies, on their current, on what they have currently proposed, any of that, even though, and on their physical capabilities. Is Harris capable? Sure, she can totally do that. But Biden, he is slipping, and you can see this. And it's like lying. I don't understand why anybody can't see that he is on a path towards mental decline, that he is declining mentally. I do not get it. Why? Why is it that you're telling somebody like me that is not happening. Me, who understands the brain pretty well, and I actually would know, I guess, what type of thing is going on in his brain based off of his behaviors. I think it's very readily apparent. I think he has a form of dementia. It would make sense based off of his history that it would be vascular dementia. And for somebody to tell me that that is not happening, that all of those things were just gaffes, that him, saying the most ridiculous things like, well, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. No, that's not how that works. And you, Mr. Biden, do not get to dictate blackness in America, period. And the fact that he feels like he has that privilege, I guess, to do so is absurd. And I have a really good word I always use, and people have made fun of me for using it. I'm trying to think of audacious. It is audacious of him to basically do that. My thought here is the left needs to move on and make their own party, because when it becomes apparent to more of the American people that the Democrats are no longer the Democratic Party of old, they are a new Democratic Party, which is the new conservative party. They would be akin to Reaganism in the 80s. That is the same old policy I'm seeing out of these Democrats. That is the policy in which other people have proposed that are being ushered into the big tent of the Democrats. And so we as a left, there will be a vacuum. The left has traditionally not had any power in the United States, period. And there's a lot of reasons for that. It's not because of just not having good policy or anything like that. It's because we oppose capitalism, and moneyed interests aren't interested in that. Anyways, there will be a vacuum there for leftists to create their own party if we can get our shit together. We have a lot of infighting because we believe this type of, leftism is better than this type of leftism. Oh, but this type of leftism, we both can agree that are bad. And then that type of leftism thinks that type of leftism is bad. That's negotiable and loves their leftism. And so there's a lot of flipping infighting with the left. And I read an article when I did the video on the political brain, and it was very binary. And I understand that political affiliation is not a binary process. But when I did that, one of the things that stood out to me from one of the articles that I read was basically why the left fights so much. Now, this article was written under the Clinton administration, if I recall, or maybe under the Bush administration, one of the two. And they noted Bill Clinton and all of the infighting that was occurring with the people on the left. And it's because the left tends to be a lot more independent-minded. They are naturally anti-authoritarian, which means that they are not going to solidify all of they're not going to put all of their chips in one basket, basically. And that will explain a lot of why the left fights so much. But at the same time, the left, I find ourselves getting distracted. We fight a lot with the Democrats, with liberals, if you will. I think it is time again to move off of that. Like, we are not going to change their position. The right has already gotten them, and they are too ingrained in their ideology to ever be moved towards the left in a very serious fashion. Because what is the left again? they're anti-capitalist. So they are the true, I guess, people, the true revolutionaries, if you will. They aren't anything that would advocate for a system that is in play to get day, because of the fact that all of these systems fail in so many different ways. So where does that leave the left? Again, there will be a vacuum for leftism and left-leaning policy. I don't know what that would look like. I don't know if it's even viable, but I believe, because of the fact that there is an essential vacuum there with actual people opposing what is happening with not only this administration, but also previous administrations. I think that the left can solidify around that and start really thinking about how they need to construct a new party, because again, the Democrats, they ain't it, basically. I don't know if it's even possible for the left to do. One of the things that I've also noticed is a commonality between some people, pretty much everybody that considers themselves leftists, and some faction on the right. And it's because of the, if you look at, the political compass that's, here, and it has basically an up, down, left, right portion. And if you go from right to left, that is liberal, that is conservative, liberal / progressive. But then now you have the up-down axis, which is authoritarian and anti-authoritarian. They share a commonality with anti-authoritarians on the right. And those tend to be, I don't agree with anything they propose or want, but that tends to be what is the party? The name is escaping me. Do you guys know who I'm talking about? I'm located in the far left bottom corner. Brad Bloom mentions that on the political compass. I'll see about linking that too, so you can take libertarians. Thank you, libertarians. That tends to be libertarians that are pretty anti-authoritarian. Those who are more towards authoritarianism aren't libertarians, despite them calling themselves that. So we've got a libertarian faction on the right and pretty much the whole of the left on the left. And there's the commonality of anti-authoritarianism, anti-establishment, and no place better to grab people and move them left would be, as far as locality in the country, in the South. Hold on. I know some people will be like, what? They're the reddest states in the country. You're right. They are, but that is by design. They do a lot of things to assure that people don't vote, like voting ID, closing polling stations. They've been doing this for years. It's been doing it for the last 2 cycles, maybe. About, at least we know they did it last time, during this primary. And so the South, I think, is a good place. For one, a lot of people of color, particularly Black people, are revolutionary leftists. They just don't have, the South has a huge proportion. They actually have the majority of people who are Black in the US. That is where the majority of Black people live. They live under this horrible, horrible thing known as conservatism. So of course they get it. We know, we get it. You also have a contingent in the South that are maybe paranoid isn't a good word. Somebody else can think of a word for me, but I'm going to say paranoid, and they do not trust those in power. And this is pretty much the whole of the South, right? Pretty much everybody, just not the political leaders. One of the deterrents here, one of the walls or brick walls you might encounter is with this contingent of the population is their inability to, not their inability, but where they are politically based, and it's all based on what they know. And they tend to not know a lot politically. And so we'd have, if we're truly interested in creating our own party and grabbing the people that we know we can get on our side, you would have to take the time to explain how politics work in the country. You would have to take that time with them because they do not know. And trust me, if they knew a lot of these things, they would majority would oppose them. So think there's a Twitter account that's accidentally leftist, where where the account grabs things that conservatives said, that screenshots them, and then puts that in their tweet, and it's a leftist position. And I just a lot of conservatives don't know that they are actually pretty hardcore leftist. It's surprising how many people don't know. And it's because of this binary system that is in the United States, that you have been told there are positions in which people fight over like cats and dogs, and it's an equal fight. There's equal amount of people that oppose it and equal amount of people that support it. That is not true. For instance, let me give you an example. Abortion. So abortion has been 70% of Americans, 70% do not believe that that abortion should be abolished. They want it to be available whenever and wherever you need it. And there is about 30% of that 70% that wants it basically to be available pretty much no matter what, just anytime, any place, no matter where you are in life, what happened to you, or anything like that. So that's a huge proportion of society. And that is not a partisan issue anymore. I don't know why people think it is, because it's not. And so people are under the impression that 50% of Americans support it, 50% of Americans oppose it. That is not true. Let's take Medicare for all. Okay, I don't know if you've been following where people have been and are now based off of what has happened in the pandemic, but we are now at 60% of American population voters want a Medicare for all single payer system in the US because they know how broken the private system is. 60% is not half and half. 60% is 60%. I think we all know percentages. And so again, not a partisan issue. I don't even know why we're debating it anymore. Climate change, for God's sake. The majority of Americans believe that climate change is real, it is man-made, and it needs to be addressed. What is Biden doing? Nothing really, right? And so these are not partisan issues. And I believe that this is the narrative that a lot of people in the South get. I know because I live in the South. And yeah, it's pretty hardcore with this narrative of everything's half and half, split down the middle. You're either right or left. There's no room for any differences between the spectrums here. And we are debating it. Okay, so can we please have easier names, easier screen names, but Howinus says we are debating it because politicians are corrupt. End of sentence. Yes, there is a lot of political corruption in the system, and we are debating it because of that corruption. I don't see why we're even talking about or debating abortion rights just because of how many people support it. It just is absurd. It's absurd. And it's no, you don't need debate anymore. Why are we debating something that has already been debated and people agree upon? That's done. The debate is done. But they want to remain here in the debating situation or position because for some reason it helps the super wealthy who bribe politicians, lobby politicians, right? Gary Priestley says 60% is 50% larger than 40%. And he did it like a little, that face. At least that's what I think the face is. So yeah. And I don't know why we're debating it. Yes, I know why, but I think it's absurd that people, like voters, believe it should be debated or that it needs to be debated, because it doesn't. It makes no sense to debate something we all agree upon or the majority agrees upon. And in a democracy, when a majority agrees upon something, that is something that should be implemented based off of policy, right? Unless it violates people's rights. I do not see how people's rights are violated with the vast majority of things that leftists want to see happen and propose. It is not going to violate anybody's right to have a Medicare for all single payer system. It just, whose rights are we concerned about here? And we are, okay, so conservatives believe that it's a 50-50 split. That isn't true. And it's largely because they don't have the knowledge or the political knowledge. And I think that it would take a lot of time to convince a conservative that obviously agrees with leftists that they are actually leftists. I think that would be a chore. And so the left would have to basically appeal to that crowd too, because we do not have power in the United States. I don't even know how many people would identify themselves as leftist but not liberal, right? They are left of liberal. And I don't know how many people that is, or like what percentage. I think, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's somewhere around 30% of people, at least that are Democratic voters, are on the hard left. I think that there's probably more. I want to believe that there's more. But if 30% right now can basically run the nation as they are, then 30% of the damn left can do the same, right? And I guarantee programs that would actually help the American people will never be a liberal again or never be a conservative again. They will continue to vote for leftists because that is how confident I am in leftism and the policies that we propose. Where you're going to hit a roadblock is the anti-capitalism portion. And you'd have to convince a lot of people about all the injustices capitalism entails, which, as we all know, and I say often on Twitter, is that capitalism requires hierarchy. It needs people at the bottom and it needs people at the top to survive. And if you are interested in lifting up the people from the bottom, then you need to be an anti-capitalist, period, because capitalism will not do it. Howie Noyce says, I don't know if you Americans imagine how the rest of the world sees your country at the moment. Pains me to say it, but you are quickly becoming the laughingstock of the entire planet. I already thought we were kind of there. We were already laughingstocks. I mean, think of the Bush years. Wasn't it embarrassing to identify as Americans then? And because we were laughing stocks on the world stage. And yes, we know that. We understand how it is. At least the left, the real left, gets it. We know where we're at, and it's frustrating for sure. I actually don't think we need to be a laughing stock, but I think we also don't need to really be a major player on the world stage, if that makes sense. I don't think if we are to stay in that position, we need to focus on not being the world's police, but being the world's healers, basically. Or, yeah, healers, people who provide aid to other nations. That's who America needs to be, in my opinion, if they want to be on the world stage. I think that being the cop is probably very toxic, and it creates an environment that's quite toxic, not only in the United States, but worldwide. And when you're the world cop or the world's police, the police are where are they again on political spectrum, right? Just think about it. They're very authoritarian. On average, not all police or whatever, but they're very authoritarian. And so when you have that authoritarian mentality and that's what you're transmitting to other societies. What do the other societies do? Well, they start becoming authoritarians themselves. And that's why we cannot and we shouldn't be in that position that we're in. Torrential Rage mentions that I think Biden's handlers got his medication dose correct for the DNC speech. There are up and downs. I don't remember. Maybe you guys can enlighten me, but what time in the day did he deliver his speech? Brad Bloom mentions, actually, I'm going to read a different comment if you don't mind, because there's some other people that I do not know or haven't seen in a bit. Okay, so Mr. LTLB says, we've always been in relation to being a laughing stock. Maya Atkinson also kind of that same mentality. We're becoming a laughing stock because we already knew we were. Do we want to go to a place where, harking back to the nostalgia mentality, using nostalgia to build your base, that is a conservative move. I don't want to go back. I don't think we have the option to go back. I'm sorry, I went off to another tangent and went off to another place, guys. I apologize. I don't think that we should go back, and I don't think that we can go back. Not only because of all the things that Donald Trump broke, like our public park system, but also because there was a reason why Donald Trump came into power in the first place. And the ability to prevent that is important. And there's a need to prevent that. But if you go back to something like the Obama years, which is Trump light, but with a smile, you're going to still have that climate there that will maybe eventually get a competent authoritarian on the right come in and they support. And the competent authoritarian is capable of doing so much damage. I would run away as soon as possible. I'm already considering immigrating. I have been for a long time. Okay. See. I'm just reading comments if you don't mind. Maya Atkinson. So you're saying that I get yelled at every time I bring that up. Your initial comment was Biden can hold it together for a few hours under unstressful circumstances. I would imagine that delivering a speech is quite a stressful circumstance. Now, he is a seasoned person that has been in power, that has given speech after speech after speech. So I guess perhaps there was less stress upon him because of that fact. But I'm curious on, yeah. Brad Bloom says, I defy anyone to tell me what specifically was said at the DNC convention. It was 99.9% platitude propaganda. Absolutely. And with the selection of Harris, we see that they are not interested in policy. They're interested in identity is important, but I'm going to say identity politics, right? Where it's terrible justice system. Let's have, but with a Black woman leading it instead of a white man. Ha ha, isn't that better? No, not really. It's still a terrible justice system. How is that better? People can fall back into that, I guess, very surface level understanding of how the political process is run. And so they see somebody like Harris and they're like, yeah, cool. She's representing people. And I don't think it's very representative of the left at all. And so, again, we do not have representation in any congressional, at least federal Congress. Why do we pay taxes again? Yeah. So Black Outcast Media Broadcasting, that is a very long name, says there was no policy at all. Damn the Dems. Yes. But again, here's where I stand. We, as people on the left, need to move off the Dems. We can criticize them, but criticize them on policy, period. We don't have to go with like, oh, well, this was a bad selection and blah, 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 which I'm doing. So pardon. But we do, again, need to make our own party and then criticize everybody hardcore and show how, because I think people are understanding to some extent, at least based off the healthcare crisis, they understand that we need a better system. And a better system is not going to be had based off of all the people that had created the original system. That's not how that works. So we need to start being creative. We need to start being solidified, right, as a real, people who are capable of holding office, who can back an idea and propose it, and that would be consistent among the majority of leftists. I do not see us having any political power without that. We do not and will not have political power within the Democratic Party. They have made their choice. And if they want to make that choice, then fine. Maybe, and I know some people will disagree with this. I think that the Republican Party is dying, and Donald Trump and all of those people that were the Tea Partyists that have kind of shifted even more right. The racist contingent. There's people in the Republican, not all people in the Republican Party are racists. But but the racists hold political power, and they don't want to be associated with that. So where do they go? The Democrats, because they're basically saying, hey guys, we're a right-wing party, but we're just not maybe as racist, right? That's all they're saying. And people are falling for it. And then you have some people on the left that, well, I don't think they're leftists, but they think they're leftists. And, maybe their heart's in a good place, but they really believe the Democratic Party will, once they stop placating the right and they win the presidency, they really truly believe that Biden and Harris will then shift left. No, they won't. Like, why would we believe that? Biden, do you not know Biden's history at all? Biden, who I heard somebody call him, what was it? Jim Crow Joe, because he was in support of segregation. He worked hard to basically prevent integrated schools. And he did this through a busing initiative. How is it that we don't know this? Do people know this? And I mean, he's got a very, very, very sordid record that I would consider is right wing. And so for you to ever believe that you can shift Biden to the left, more power to you, but that ain't going to happen. Again, we need to make our own party. So Mr. TLB says, no, they're not racist. Many consider me a Republican, but I'm not. I just absolutely hate politics. So I have a question for you. Do you hate politics or do you hate the parties? Because I think that, and I maintain this, that politics is integrated in life. If you are a living being under some sort of state or whatever, your life is political. It legit is. People get to determine if you die or not. That is a political thing, especially when it comes to clean air, clean water. If you get poisoned by water, and that was because of deregulation of some company who is now able to basically dump into the rivers, that is political, and you die. Again, they determine your life. So I don't hate politics myself. What I hate are the existing parties. I do believe that one has more staying power than the other, and I think that is honestly the right Democratic Party. I think they have shifted to the right, and they should be considered conservatives, but in the middle conservatives. What is that called? Like mid-conservatives? Anyways, they're in the middle on conservatism. Okay, so Maya Atkinson mentions, when you try to tell people the truth about Biden, other people jump out of the woodwork. Do you want 4 more years of Trump? Thank you. I agree with the sentiment that you are saying here, Maya, which is you can criticize Biden and still dislike Trump. That can exist in the same space, in the same person in their head. They can absolutely hate Trump and they can absolutely hate Biden. And honestly, that makes sense to me. I don't understand why people think that you are incapable of doing this. Are they themselves incapable of doing this? I don't know. It seems like it. It seems like if they criticize you for criticizing the political elite, then they are incapable of understanding a multitude of sentiments. They are incapable they are incapable of thinking in a way that is other than binary. They are black and white, up, down, left, right. That's it. That's their thinking process. I don't think that we can reach them. I don't think that there's room for that because of the fact that they only see the binary. Okay, so Black Outcast Media Broadcasting says, I can't stand Trump, but I would never vote for Jim Crow Joe Biden. It's a matter of like harm reduction. And I hate to say this, but again, if I was in a swing state, I'm not. So I basically have no say in the matter at all. But if I were in a swing state, I would have a very hard decision to make. One in which I do not envy anybody who is currently in a swing state, because of the fact that they have to consider Trump or Biden, and they hate both candidates. They hate both possibilities, but they also hate what's happening under the Trump administration. They absolutely hate it. And a lot of it is the racial tension that is here. And so if you want to basically state that Trumpism, that what he supports, what the administration supports, is not something you support, you should probably vote for Biden. It would be a way to say that racism has no place in America. We all know he's kind of racist, though, but I don't think his policies would be as bad as Trump's. Gary Priestley says, hate to say it, but any new party of progressives may still need to compromise with Democrats to survive. There's not yet enough support for majority progressive party. Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I was wondering if like we had enough in the numbers. I think that younger people, Gen Zers, whatever they're called, they are actually more hardcore left. And do we compromise with the Democratic Party within the party or outside of it? That's the question that I'm asking. And I propose that it's outside of it, because if we're going to have a political binary system, the Democrats are the GOP. That's it. They have made their choice. And so there is a vacuum here, a vacuum that can be filled by a lot of people in the South if you basically advertise to them, if you say that they have a place, because the left is what? Anti-authoritarian, anti-establishment. And holy crap, everybody in the South is anti-establishment, pretty much, except for the Trumpist. But everybody outside of that is anti-establishment. Anti-establishment. They just don't trust the political elite, probably for good reason. Their own solutions to that isn't something that is shared traditionally among leftists. But I think that if you can show them, again, the broken system, you can probably shift them. I don't know if it should be outside of the Democratic Party. I don't think it's inside. You have no influence. That article that I was mentioning earlier says that did I mention this? That the left has more influence than ever in the Democratic Party. No, they don't. Clinton's policy proposals, Clinton's platform was more progressive than Biden's platform. Biden has explicitly shunned the left based off of his platform, based off of his policy positions, based off of his VP pick. We know. And so I believe that the Democratic Party has actually shifted even more to the right. Again, they're being the big tent, but basically expelling the leftists. Again, I don't know if we have enough numbers to make our own party. What did Aaron say? Aaron A mentions leftists should make a party that runs against D's locally, but caucuses for president nationally. That would make sense. That would make total sense. The only problem is that our political, political process here is very money based. And so if you cannot find the funding, traditionally you don't get elected. That there are a few cases, actually quite recently where somebody was substantially underfunded than their rival and they won that position, or they won at least the primary or whatever. There are a few cases in which that has happened recently. So it's not impossible, but it does make that process that much harder for leftists because, again, being anti-capitalist, you will not get a lot of those big dollar donors behind you. Just you won't. And so you would be reliant on small donations from people. And look at the climate now. We're all fucking broke. Um, you know, like how I wouldn't be able to donate right now to a political party. I just don't have the funds, despite my wanting to. And so I think it would make it that much more difficult. But I think we can do it. I do believe it would be a terrible chore, an uphill battle. But if you truly believe in your policies, if you truly believe in your political ideology, then yeah, you need to fight for a new party, period. And you need to pick up that fight against the Democrats. I think that's the best way to do it. I don't think that the Republican Party, with the 30% of people who support Donald Trump's policies in the whole, I don't think that is sustainable. So the Republican Party is essentially dying, and the Democratic Party is becoming the Republican Party, and then leftists have nothing. Michael Contreras asks, what do you make of Justice Democrats? AOC, Ilhan Omar, and Rashida Tlaib are from that faction of the party that are way to the left of the party itself. Yeah, they are definitely left to the party. They definitely do not support a lot of things that the Democrats currently are doing or have proposed themselves. But at the same time, I think they're not left enough. I think that if the leftists had their own party, I truly believe that Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, and AOC would probably be members of that party if it was there. It's just not there. And or at least they would be kind of halfway between it. Like they would be the moderates, if that makes sense. The right wing, the moderates are them, and then you've got the left. Now, I say this because they support a lot of positions that Bernie Sanders supports. And for me, as a leftist, Bernie Sanders was my compromise. He was not my ideal. And so shifting even more right to Biden is not preferable, to say the least. Justice Democrats, I do not know enough about that organization as a whole. I do know that there's a contingent on the left that absolutely hates them. And then there's a contingent that thinks they're fine, that likes them. I think that their heart's in a good place, at any rate. I think that they truly want to shift the conversation towards the left. And I think that there is a place for them politically as moderates again. They would be the people that would do the most of the compromising between the Democratic right and then the leftist party, whatever that becomes. One thing, again, about leftists, I keep repeating, is that leftists are anti-capitalist. AOC is not anti-capitalist. In fact, she said she supports capitalism. I don't think Ilhan Omar or Rashida Tlaib has mentioned what they support at all. So you guys can correct me if I'm wrong on that. Brad Bloom says, bullseye. Senator Sanders was the compromise, and who we run next will make the establishment wish they had compromised. I don't know if that's the case. In fact, I feel like their support of Joe Biden and then their selection of Harris was a signal to the left saying, you didn't support Hillary Clinton. You didn't vote for Hillary Clinton. Is this what you want? You're going to get this time. I honestly think that was their thought process in that, because there were other corporatist Democrats on in the Democratic primary that they could have thrown all their chips behind. But they did it to Biden, for Biden, which was one of the most right-wing Democrats in the Democratic Party. I guess Michael Bloomberg was more right, and he's the only one. So yeah, it feels like a punishment, and it feels like it was on purpose. Like, look at what you did. Look at what you're going to get because you didn't select Hillary Clinton like we told you to. You know, by the way, I'm pretty sure I haven't told you guys this, but I was a delegate selector for the convention. I was a selector who would vote to determine who then would go and be the delegate for my, I guess, area, for my region. And you declare basically what person you will support, or what person you're there to vote for their delegates for. Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, Elizabeth Warren, there was representation on all of those. There was nobody else. 1 Elizabeth Warren, 6 Joe Bidens, 75 Bernie Sanders. It's weird to me that Bernie Sanders lost. Well, this is an aside. It's weird to me that Bernie Sanders lost my region when you have the vast majority of people there to select delegates for him. They are Bernie Sanders supporters. And so when you are a delegate selector, you only are allowed to vote for the delegate for the candidate in which you selected. So I was only allowed to vote for Bernie Sanders candidates. However, when I got there, I had this is where I think I got COVID, by the way. I had to sign a piece of paper. It had like, these are the processes, this is what you do. And it had a little thing in there that, and you promise, or you have to support, and you promise to support whomever the candidate ends up being. And I had to be like, okay, yeah, sure. Because at the time it was legit probably going to be Bernie Sanders. I honestly think that Bernie Sanders probably won and kicked Joe Biden's ass on Super Tuesday. I do believe that. But because of the fact that every representation, like if you do statistics, right, and you take a sample, we'll take the sample of my region, for instance. If you have 75 to 6 to 1, that means that would indicate that within that population, there may be more Bernie supporters than there are any other candidate. And so I know that this was an anecdote, but it was such a blaring difference, guys. It was so divergent that it is startling to me, and it is very confusing to me that he lost my area. Anyways, they had us sign that piece of paper that we promised to support the candidate no matter who it was, which again is a thing from 2016, them thinking like, yeah, the left won't support the candidate, and they're largely right. I think they already had it planned out on that time by that time that, and this was before we knew who won the primary. I think they already had it planned out, and they already knew who they already selected somebody. Otherwise, that statement wouldn't have been in that contract that I signed. It just wouldn't have been. But and also, how authoritarian is that? That in order to select a delegate, in order to participate as a voter in the process, I had to pledge to support any candidate, another candidate, even though they are essentially the polar opposite of all of the things that I believe, all of my morals. I had to do that. That is such an authoritarian move that I actually said when I signed it, I said, that's ridiculous. And I almost considered not doing it, but I wanted to vote. And I needed to sign that paper in order to vote. It was a requirement. I think that is so right wing and it's so authoritarian, if nothing else, that I'm surprised no other people called the Democratic Party of my state out for it, because it was not okay to do that. As a voter, I should be able to vote, not be turned away regardless of what candidate ends up winning. I shouldn't be required to therefore support that candidate. Now, they're not going to check, so I don't have to worry about it. And if they do, they would only check based off of if I decide to be a delegate selector again. They would check in that circumstance. Otherwise, they're none the wiser. And so, as you can tell through this live stream, I adamantly oppose Biden. I think that it would be a more harm reduction aspect in order to vote for him. But that's it. That's it. There's no agreement on any ground with him. Okay, so Mr. LTLB, you have a very I guess your handle, your screen name is pops out for some reason. I guess it's because of the capitalization. So I'm going to read another one. But Mr. LTLB says, I have no label, but I have values. I have morals. I have ethics. Exactly. I would go for values, morals, and ethics before anything else. And if you've got those three, then you're probably good to go. Now, do we believe the same morals? Do we hold the same values? That's a question. It's probably not a question that is by, partisan in the 50-50 range. That doesn't really exist in American politics, even though we're told it does. It's not there. And it's surprising how often on pretty much every single issue, if you break it down, on every single issue, Americans agree with each other. And we're then told that Americans don't agree with each other, and that, because of that, the political elite will not act on the things in which we agree upon. That's what we're told. That's the narrative, and it's by design. Yeah, so in relation to me mentioning, Gen Z being more progressive than millennials, Maya Atkinson says the youngest generation is always the most progressive. The boomers were progressive in their day. Yeah, which is why boomers don't really understand why the left has a problem with them. They're like, we were the left. We are the left. We are the ones who did, oppose Vietnam. I'm not sure if they did anything else though. Because they voted Reagan in, right? That was totally right wing. So, but they think they're on the left. I know that the younger generations are going to probably be even more left than me. I don't know what that even looks like, but they'll be that. And I understand that moments of generations, their time expires. And why the boomers don't get that is beyond me. I think it's a division tactic by the political elite, by separating generations in the first place, and by saying this generation does this, this generation does that, and oh God, look how terrible the youngest generation is. Aren't they horrible? Look at the things that they want. Look at the clothes they're wearing. Look at the music they're listening to. It's all by design so that we continue to fight each other as opposed to fighting them. So that is my take home here. The Democratic Party is no longer a left party. It probably hasn't been for a while, but it certainly is. That should be so obvious at this point. So the left will no longer and cannot shift the Democratic Party to the left. What the left needs to do is build their own party, period. Those are my two take-home points. And I guess another take-home point would be like, try to see the tactics that are being used in our society to divide us. Because again, that's by design. And why they're dividing us. What is their purpose? And the fact that we need to start looking up and start attacking the people that need to be attacked. And that for that reason, you have an absolute right to criticize Joe Biden, period, despite what anybody may say. So yeah, that's my take home. Some random G33K says the Democrats haven't been left since Bill Clinton and his third wave. Since Bill Clinton. So are you saying Bill Clinton was left? Because I don't think he was. That was the time period the Democratic Party started kind of being more corporatist, was with Clinton. And so by design, that would move the party to the right. And so I don't think the left was in power since Jimmy Carter. He was the most left so far. And that was a while ago, if you guys haven't noticed. And so again, the Democratic Party ain't it. Think of our own party. Let's see. I'm trying to get some other commenters in here. I can't get y'all in here if y'all ain't commenting. Yeah, so Maya Atkinson says the same thing. We haven't had a Democrat since Carter. Yeah. And as Aaron mentions here, and Carter was still quite imperialist, which the hard left is not. Regarding what is being said in the chat as far as labeling is concerned, I don't think it's that simple to just, okay, we're no labels, none. Because again, whether labels are, at least for a person, labels are identity. Now, identity politics is problematic because it only scratches the surface of issues, for one. For two, it probably just is lip service, for two. Or it's trying to be symbolic, but at a superficial level. So identity politics is problematic, but identity is important. And identity often comes down to labels. Now, this is the thing about humans. We are good at classifying things. This is why pattern recognition, if you will, and a pattern recognition that we have is often how we appear, what we believe in, and things like that. That is a pattern for a particular type of people. And so that's where the labels come in, right? The left, the right, the center. That is where those come from, is recognition of certain patterns that seem to be cohesive among the groups. I don't think we're going to be able to get beyond that just because of the fact that that's what we do. That's how we understand the world. That's how we are able to know if it's dangerous or not. If someone has been bitten by a rattlesnake and I come across a rattlesnake, I need to recognize that pattern so that I don't stay in the vicinity and get bitten myself. So we have to do this. And so that's what's going to be so hard. Now, if you do not agree with left, center, right labeling, that's a thing. We can actually break down all of these factions and their belief system. But they're still going to be labeled in a way. Maybe it's not like a official label, I guess, if you will, because a lot of these factions do not have political power. And so they are not recognized, at least in the US. And I just don't, but it's the labeling is still going to be there. The US specifically has a very terrible history with Black Americans because of slavery. And it has still gone unresolved since slavery. And slavery has only been shifted to another form of slavery, the prison system. And so I don't think that removing those labels is necessarily a good idea, because it will not allow us to then address any problem that certain people groups are experiencing. So that's where I am. So Torrential Rage mentions Carter had austerity economic policies, was a moralist, felt bad about pardoning Vietnam draft dodgers, was the first Dem to have neoliberal advisors, engaged in war crimes. He went left after. Yeah, I don't think his presidency was particularly left, but he definitely did shift to the left. Usually you see people that were either running for president or were president actually shift to the right. So he's the anomaly here. Howie now says, need to work now. I've procrastinated for too long, the whole day. But thank you very much. Bullseye, great insights, and your diagnosis is correct. Great. So thank you also for the £5 or €5. I think they're euros, maybe. Anyways, thank you. I appreciate it. So I'm actually going to cut this stream now. I do appreciate you guys listening to me ramble and to recognize, I hope that you take what I've said here and kind of push it into action. Maybe convince other people that share your values and your morals and whatever else it was. Maybe try to convince them that we can and we do need to create a new party. I think that is the best thing that you can do right now, because we have no say in anything else. All right. So thank you guys so much for listening. Again, I will see you guys next week. And I hope you have a great weekend too. Theoretically, great stream. Don't let the label you. Exactly. All right. Bye, guys. End stream.